There's blood on your door, my friend said, with a hint of surprise in his eyes. When I came back from the supermarket, carrying the bag full of groceries in my hand, I was suddenly stopped in my tracks by these words. I looked at the red mark on the door frame, and my heart was filled with confusion and uneasiness. It wasn't my blood. Maybe something had happened inside, I told myself in my heart. However, the moment I pushed the door open, a putrid smell hit me. I forced myself to go inside. There was nothing unusual in the house, except for the knife in the kitchen. That knife was lying there, with a deep red blood stain clearly visible on it, and the handle still had a few drops of condensed water on it. I froze, and my heart started beating rapidly. That knife obviously didn't belong to me. It wasn't the knife I usually use. Instead, it was an overly unfamiliar kitchen knife that was extremely sharp. It lay quietly on the cutting board. The blood-stained brightened eye-catching, as if something terrifying had just happened, and those drops of water on the handle seemed as if someone had just held it and wasn't in a hurry to wipe it dry. What's going on? I muttered to myself, heavily daring to enter the kitchen. My hand was still tightly gripping the bag of groceries, as if it could deal me a bit of comfort, but the uneasiness in my heart grew even heavier. I tried to tell myself that this must just be a misunderstanding or that I had remembered something wrong. However, when I looked down and saw the bloodstains on the kitchen floor, my heart started beating even faster. Those bloodstains didn't look like ordinary splatters. Instead, they had deliberately formed a long and narrow trail on the floor, leading to the corner of my living room. It was as if someone had crawled on the floor, dragging their body away, but cold sweat broke out on my back. Then my vision began to blur. Everything around me seemed unreal. I staggered towards the bloodstains, my mind blank, hardly daring to see the end of the line. Although I knew I should call the police, I was afraid that what I would see would be more than just bloodstains. I walked to the corner of the living room, my heart trembling. In the corner, there was an old wooden chair. The fabric on the chair had been worn out, but what made my hair stand on end was up beside the chair. There was a person lying quietly. He had his back to me, his whole body stiff, as if he were dead. I couldn't believe my eyes. I couldn't believe the authenticity of all this. My legs suddenly went weak and I almost fell. I read my eye hard, trying to confirm whether all this was just an illusion. But the scene in front of me was still so clear. Who were you? My voice was hoarse, almost swallowed up by my own fear. I looked down and found that the person was wearing my father's old clothes. My heart tightened. Suddenly my father had been dead for 3 years. I managed to summon up a bit of courage and tried to approach that person, wanting to confirm who he was. When I got closer to him, the putrid smell in the air became even stronger. I could feel that smell penetrating deep into my bones, making me almost want to vomit. I crouched down and gently lifted the man's shoulder, trying to turn him around to see his face. When I touched his skin, it was so cold that my heart tightened. He slowly turned his face around and opened his hollow eyes. There was no sign of life in them, only a deep darkness. The corners of his mouth curled into a strange smile. Then he made a low guttural sound in his throat, as if he was saying something, but I couldn't make it out. Immediately after that, his face quickly deformed, becoming distorted and hideous. At that moment, I couldn't hold it in any longer and suddenly fell to the ground. My scream almost tore through the whole space. However, that man didn't stop his movements. He slowly stood up and walked towards me stiffly like a puppet. My mind was in chaos, but my body, driven by fear, mechanically moved backward. I didn't know what was happening, and I didn't want to know either. Every time he took a step closer, I took a step back until I bumped into the cold wall. Don't come any closer. I was almost ready, but my voice had become weak and trembling. The dead body stopped in front of me. Then his cold hands reached out towards me. The putrid smell in the air became even more pungent. I felt dizzy and the scene in front of me started to become blurry, until the hand finally touched my shoulder. I felt a cold force penetrate deep into my bones. My breath stopped, as if my soul was being swallowed up by this cold aura. Just then, I suddenly heard a rapid knock on the door. Breathing through all this fear, I snapped back to my senses and almost instinctively went towards the door, eagerly pulling it open. Outside the door stood a police officer in uniform. His face was pale, and he looked as if he was about to say something. But he froze. I froze too. Standing at the door, completely unprepared for this sudden appearance, the police officer's face was pale, and his eyes widened slightly. Obviously, he hadn't expected to see me at this moment either. The air outside the door seemed to freeze in an instant, and the world around was strangely quiet. My heart was beating violently, and my foot felt as if something was stopping it, and I couldn't make a sound. Suddenly, his gaze dropped and he looked at the ground by the door. It was blood, red blood, quickly flowing out of the door and spreading down along the doorway. The color of the blood looked particularly glaring under the dim streetlights, as if it was reminding us that all this wasn't a dream. Are you okay? The police officer finally spoke. His voice was trembling and low, and he seemed afraid to look at me. I opened my mouth, trying to say something, but the words got stuck in my throat, and I couldn't utter any clear words stutteringly. My vision began to blur, as if everything around me had become unreal, except for the season flow of blood. The rest of the world seemed so distant and strange. Why are you standing here? I finally managed to force out the sentence, but my voice was unusually hoarse, so much so that I could hardly hear myself clearly. The police officer's eyes flickered. He took a deep breath as if he was preparing to say something important. I just heard your shouts. We received a call reporting the situation and were instructed to come here to check it out, he said, pointing into the house with his finger trembling slightly. But before he could finish his sentence, his face turned ugly again, as if he had seen something terrifying. He suddenly turned around, his gaze sweeping across the inside of the house, then his eyes fixed on the corner behind the door. I followed his horrified gaze, and at that moment, my heart almost stopped beating.